Joni, what were some of the highlights and the accomplishments of your year?
There were a ton of highlights and accomplishments during my year. I guess with every Rotary president, one of the major highlights of your year is the beginning. You get to go to an international Rotary conference. And in my year, I went stateside, which sometimes people say, oh, you didn't get to go abroad. But the year that I went, it was held in New Orleans. And Bill and I had never been to New Orleans. So it was really a great opportunity for us to see the recovery from what had happened in 2005 with the break of the levees, and to meet thousands of people. And some of our club members went, so we had little hospitality gatherings. And I had an opportunity to hear Bill Gates talk. On the third day that he came in, this was the year when he and others coined that phrase that we only have that much further to go to end polio in our world. And it was a really moving time. Some of the other things that we got to do that year, in 2010 I was fortunate enough to be part of the club leadership that worked on setting our 5-year strategic plan. So our board in 2011 had to just make sure that we were moving in the direction that the club had set the year before. And we did a number of things along those lines. One of the things that I think was a challenge for all of us was that membership had declined from 2008 to that time by 12%. A number of our members, because of finances, had to leave the club. So our board made a decision to waive the $300 initiation fee, to try to get members to rejoin, to look for new members. And that was one of the first years, I think, for Rotary International and at our district level and state level and in our club that we really started to think about how are we going to recruit youth. And so there was a new avenue of service created that year through Rotary called New Generations. And this embraced all of the youth programs that included Interact and RILA and Youth Abroad, those kinds of programs, to try to figure out how to recruit the youth to enjoy Rotary the way that we've all enjoyed it, and to hopefully be able to replace all of us as we are no longer able to do so. Also that year we had an L Tour to End Polio ride, and under Gary Hirsch's leadership for the club, he brought us international recognition. We were featured in the Rotarian magazine, and we had 14 riders in that ride, and we raised $104,000. And at the next week following the Rotary that Rotary L Tour ride, which of course the L Tour is for more than Rotary, but there was a huge focus on the ride to end polio. The next week we were $450 short of our $104,000 goal. So Gary came to the club meeting and he held up a cycling shirt. And he said, I think Joni should have this cycling shirt, but we're $450 short, so I think you all need to chip in and buy this shirt for her. And so they did it in minutes, and I treasure that shirt. I look at it frequently. I don't wear it too often, but I do treasure it. And it was a reminder of how much our club did and what recognition we brought to polio, not only in our area, but internationally as well. That year was also an opportunity, our turn as our club to host the District 5500 conference. Bob Ernstein chaired that and planned it with all of us. It was a wonderful event. We had some of those people from the Middle East come to that event. And one of the things that I found most inspiring that came out of that meeting was a young man named Matt Jones. He was 33 years old, a 3-time survivor of cancer. His first cancer he found that he had when he was in college. And he spoke to the club about how much adversity and failure and setbacks can, on the converse, also lead to some of the greatest things that people can accomplish. He also reminded us of the power of one person. Paul Harris, as he reminded us, was one person with a great vision who started the idea of Rotary, and here 100 years later or plus, we have one of the greatest humanitarian programs on earth. So the power of the person. So he was a very inspirational speaker, and I think he moved a lot of us.
Would you like to tell us about your most embarrassing moment?
I had a few embarrassing moments. I think most presidents do. One of my embarrassing moments did revolve around the L Tour. I volunteered that day to work on Tangerine Road at the water station, and some of our guests from the Middle East were riding in that tour, and one in particular, a Jordanian physician named Zait, rode up. And at the same time, this really nicely built, buff-looking guy rode up, and I said, "Oh, would you like to have your picture taken with this Jordanian physician, and you'll be famous?" And he started laughing and said to his girlfriend, "Oh, I'll be famous." And I said, "Well, you will be famous if you have your picture taken with this Jordanian Rotarian physician." So he obligingly stood there and had his picture taken. It was great. He rode away, and meanwhile, one of the GSE leaders came up to me and she said, "Did you realize who that was?" And I said, "No." And she said, "That was Barry Bonds, the baseball player." So that was kind of embarrassing that I didn't recognize him at all. And I do watch baseball, so I guess I wasn't paying attention that day.
Joni, talk to us about some of the things you were most proud of during the year.
There were a lot of things in my Rotary year to be proud of, but I'm most proud of just being a Rotarian. But I would say in that year, our board had some things to grapple with. Because of the growth of the car show over the previous 5 or 6 years, we were finding that it was difficult to have the dollars that we needed to prepare for the car show. And so one of the things we had to look at as a board, and the foundation board also looked at, was to figure out how to fund that. And so our board, with a lot of discussion, agreed to set aside 25% of the proceeds of the car show to become the seed money for the next year's car show, use 50% of it for our major recipient, Reading Seed, and split the remaining 25% between the two other categories, which were something to benefit seniors and something else that would help with job retraining. The membership ultimately ratified that decision, but it was one of those decisions where it took some time and discussion about what we were doing with the money, why we were raising the money, and it took a while for us to come to consensus, so I was really proud of that. I was also proud of the fact that I thought that a great tradition had been started by Roger Harwell, which was to close a meeting with a toast. And so one of the things I took on was to personally write a toast each time that would be meaningful to our membership and would be personal. And the great thing about it was it afforded me such a great opportunity to talk to members afterwards, because they would individually come up and tell me their story that related to my toast. And it gave me a great opportunity to get to know some of them much better. Every year I think there are good things and challenging things. And as I said earlier, some of the difficult things are also some of the things you can be most proud of later. Our club a few years earlier had taken on a project, and we reached out and tried to do a matching grant international project with the Nogales Sur Club. And this was a wheelchair project. It proved to be very difficult, primarily because of differences in priorities, differences in goals, communication, language, and just priorities. So it got to be my year, and people were getting to the point of it was frustrating, and they wanted to bring it to fruition. And through a lot of hard work on both sides of the aisle, and particularly, I would say, from Jeff Abbott, who's a former member who really worked hard because he was fluent in Spanish and brought this together. And so it was a great moment when Jim Lubinsky and Bob Logan and Sally Montine and I got to go down and participate with the Nogales Sur Club and watch these wheelchairs be given out to people who otherwise would not have any mobility because of this project. And the project ultimately has continued today and grown, And a lot of the wheelchairs are being also made by disabled people, so it's provided jobs. So I am really proud on behalf of our club that we hung in there. We learned some hard lessons on that. One of them is it's a little bit easier to do an international project if you're being asked to participate rather than pushing to participate. We did a project that same year with the Amman Petra Club from Jordan. We'd worked with them before, and they reached out to us to do a matching grant, and we were able to do some 44 water catchment water facilities to water rural areas in the desert because of our matching funds, and that was a much easier project to do. Another challenge that I had during my year was that I had selected Rip Rupke to be the Sergeant at Arms, and Rick did a great job, but he was transferred early in the year to Las Vegas for his job. So I asked Matt Blair if he would step in, and as they say, the rest is history. Matt did a terrific job as the Sergeant at Arms and went on to become a director of our club, and I think he is going to continue to be a future leader in our club. Another goal, I think, for every president is time management. It's always difficult to make sure you respond to everybody in a timely manner. I am still working. I have a busy job and I have a big family, so trying to make sure that you balance all of those things to complete everything that you need to do in a timely manner is always challenging. I found that I tried to write something in the Tusitarian every Sunday. And so every Sunday night, my husband watched me write that, and he said, wow, you know, that's a Sunday night ritual now. And so that was always a challenge, too. I had a lot of special moments. One of them was that my granddaughter, Taylor, was able to receive her Paul Harris when I was president, and my son, her dad, was there to receive it, which was great fun for me. And I think it made a very lasting impression on Taylor. And I plan to do that for all of my 7 grandchildren. So I think that's a great tradition to start the younger group on knowing what Rotary does. Scott Vaughn, who is one of our past presidents and a special friend of mine, is also my mentor. And he asked me out for a fun breakfast early in the morning, because Scott likes to do things early, to help orient me to what I would need to do as president. So we had a great time. He shared all of his pearls of wisdom with me. He showed me his photography collection and set me on my way with lots of words of encouragement, which I think is one of the main things I learned as president, that our past presidents are all a wonderful group of encouraging people. In fact, the entire club was very supportive and encouraging, and I found that to be an interesting surprise. I had not expected it, because I had been assured people would be arguing over things, and that was really not the case. I found the club to be very supportive and inviting. One of the other fun things that we got to do that year, and I think most of the presidents have done this over the last 15 or 20 years, is to go to San Carlos for the Christmas celebration, where we give out gifts to the children. And we've done a number of projects over the years, and we've completed that project. But when I got to do that, we were hosted the night before the event at the San Carlos Club at one of their members' homes for a potluck. So that was really fun to meet all those people. The next day, the kids loved getting all of the presents. Their parents were there, and we toured and saw all of the things that we had done there. The final thing that we did, which was a surprise, was that our member Ann Lancero and her husband Lou had a sailboat down in San Carlos, and they took some of us out on their sailboat in the bay, and it was really a fun time, and one of those things that you get through friendship and Rotary that you don't expect, and those are always great surprises.
What advice would you give an incoming president?
For an incoming president, I would tell you the same thing that Hugh Thompson said after I was selected. Everyone that says yes then has this moment of trepidation. Am I going to live up to the role? Am I going to do a good enough job? And Hugh just told me to go for it, embrace it, it'll be the best thing you ever did. And it proved to be true. As I said earlier, I had an opportunity to meet every single person in the club. And by the end of the year, you literally can point out and say every single person's name and something about them. It's an opportunity to talk to the speakers. You sit next to them at the table and you get to have your 15 or 20 minutes while they're eating their lunch. You're usually not because you're too worried about keeping the meeting on time. But to talk to them about whatever they're going to talk about in their special gifts and information. So that was really a wonderful opportunity. And I would tell someone to relax, enjoy it, and think about what you would like to see the club do and the accomplishments you wish the club would achieve, because one person can influence an entire club if they want to. I had a wonderful board in 2011 and 12. Past President Marianne Freitas was a great mentor to me as well. Jim Lubinsky was the incoming president-elect. Our treasurer was Pat Zumbush. Virginia Levitt was our secretary. And we had a sergeant-at-arms, as I mentioned, first Rick and then Matt Blair. And we had 6 wonderful committed directors who each worked hard in their own areas and accomplished so many things. Bob Logan, he worked on the international projects. Cheryl House, Marcia Crumweedy, Drew Vactor, Alan Schroep, and Irene Decker. And the group did a wonderful job of coming together and working on all of the many things that we needed to work on that year. And I really appreciated all of their hard work and their support and their trust in me. And I trusted them, and they seemed to trust me, and I think that really makes for a great year. And I would also remind anyone who is elected president that we have had wonderful executive directors. Mary Lothbaum was in her last year when I was there, and she was very supportive and made that job a lot easier. And now we have wonderful Dorina York, and she's just a very talented and terrific person. So that always makes the job much easier. They always say this job is not a job, it's an adventure.